If you are a student, a teacher, or a parent, or generally someone who is interested in seeing students become better, then this particular video is one that you'll find useful. Today, our focus for our student-centric lesson on the channel is on understanding student motivation. Understanding student motivation. I am Wisdom, your host, a trained clinical psychologist and educationist. For this particular lesson, there are three key things that we want to be able to do. Three key objectives. Number one, to be able to understand motivation within the context of student learning, especially. Number two, to identify the different types of student motivation that there may be, and also look at some of the dimensions of student motivation. And finally, to discuss how teachers, parents, and other individuals, including the students themselves, can enhance motivation in the learner. And so these are three key objectives that we'll be running with, and I'm hoping that at the end of the lesson, would be able to achieve that. To begin with, what at all is even motivation? According to the APA Dictionary of Psychology, motivation can be defined in several ways. So I picked three key definitions from the APA. APA stands for American Psychological Association. So APA Dictionary of Psychology. Number one definition for motivation is the impetus that gives purpose or direction to behavior and operates in humans at a conscious or unconscious level. So that's the first key definition. The impetus that gives purpose or direction to behavior and operates in humans at a conscious or unconscious level. And so when we talk about motivation, it's basically that thing that drives you, that thing that moves you, that thing that leads you to take certain actions at a particular time, do certain things in a particular way. And so the energy that drives you, the purpose, the sense of purpose, the sense of direction, the energy that drives that sense of purpose and that sense of direction is what we are referring to as motivation. So you can think of it as the engine that causes the vehicle to move. And so without the engine, there will be no, movement, no matter how much fuel there is in the vehicle or the fact that the driver is skilled. If there's no engine in that vehicle, it will not move. So the motivation, number one, is the impetus that gives purpose or direction to behavior. Second definition provided by the APA Dictionary is a person's willingness to exert physical or mental effort in pursuit of a goal or outcome. And so the second key definition is helping us to understand that motivation is about a willingness to do. And so if I am motivated, it means that I am willing to put in the work. I am willing to put in the effort. And so someone who is not motivated will not put in the work, will not exert physical or mental effort in pursuing their goal. A student who is not motivated, a student who lacks a certain level of motivation will not put in the effort in learning, in attending classes, and doing the things that will help them pursue and achieve the purposes of education. The third definition from the APA Dictionary is the act or process of encouraging others to exert themselves in pursuit of a group or organizational goal. And so this moves the attention from the individual to the others or things that would encourage them. So it is an act, it is a process of encouraging, for instance, the students' learning and engagement in learning related activities. The things that you do as a teacher, as a parent, as an educator, the things that you do that encourages the student to put in more effort is part of what is called motivation. So we can look at student motivation from the point of the student being willing to exert effort in pursuit of the academic, goals. And from the angle of the teacher, the parent, and others, who are related to the student, taking steps to encourage these students to exert the needed effort. And these are very important definitions for motivation. And there are three key types of motivation that we can talk about, especially in the context of students. And the first one is intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic means internal, it is personally fueled, it is driven from within. And so, internal motivation, so to speak, or intrinsic motivation is learning driven by personal interest or enjoyment. So a student that is intrinsically motivated learns or engages in learning related activities because of a personal interest in it or because they enjoy it. They do it because there's a certain fulfillment they get from coming for lectures, coming to school, going to class, doing the assignments and all that, attending to project works. It's a personal interest, personal fulfillment drive that is leading their educational, journey. The second motivation type is extrinsic motivation. And this is where learning is driven by external rewards or consequences. So, as a student, if you're extrinsically motivated, it means you are externally motivated. And that means that the reason why you would attend the lectures, for instance, is because you may miss a quiz, not necessarily because you want to go, because attending the lectures is important to you. So if you have a lecturer who can come up or a teacher who can come up with a pop-up quiz at any time, the reason why you would be attending the lecture is because of the consequence that may come if you don't attend and on that day there is a pop-up quiz. So extrinsic motivation is learning that is driven by external forces or external consequences. So rewards and punishments sort of lead the actions of somebody who is extrinsically motivated. Then we have what is a motivation, and that someone will say, how can that be a type of motivation? So the fact is that if there's no motivation at all, then that in itself is a kind of motivation. So there are those who are not motivated at all, or they put in little effort because of a low level of motivation. And so lack of motivation or meaningful effort that is put in for a particular task. And so you can either be intrinsically motivated, extrinsically motivated, or motivated. And there can be particular subject areas that a student may be intrinsically motivated in, but extrinsically motivated in other related areas when it comes to the academics. And so for someone who loves mathematics, a student who enjoys mathematics, numbers and figures and all that, the reason for going for maths lessons, being attentive in class, doing my homework and all that would be intrinsically driven. It will be driven by a personal interest or a certain enjoyment for that particular subject or fulfillment in that particular subject. But when it comes to maybe a subject area that I'm not so much interested in, then the reason why I would attend the lectures, I'll do what needs to be done, is because I need to get a good grade in order to be able to complete my course and come out, well. And so the fact is that the type, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, is not like cast in stone. It does not mean that there's a student who is generally intrinsically motivated, and that means that all areas of their learning engagement, it is personal interest or personal fulfillment that drives them. These students may be generally intrinsically motivated, but in certain areas of their learning, it may be driven by extrinsic motivational factors. And so when you learn to understand these dynamics, then you'll be able to know what you can do to boost the motivation level or encourage certain learning habits in your student or in yourself if you are the student when it comes to certain subject areas that you may not necessarily be interested in. So these types of motivation are very, critical for our understanding. The next thing we want to talk about are the dimensions of student motivation. In essence, what we are saying is how motivation manifests itself. I don't know if that's a better way of describing it, but what we'll be doing is to look at motivation as something. And so we'll be looking at motivation as self-efficacy, motivation as self-determination, motivation as interest and value, motivation as expectancy of success, motivation as conditioned behavior, and motivation as competition. So these are 6 key dimensions of motivation we'll look at, and we'll see how that relates to every student's journey. Now, the first one is motivation as self-efficacy. When we believe in our ability to do something, or when we believe that we have the needed resources personally to be able to do well in something, it's easier for us to commit effort and exert effort in that particular task. And so when we talked about the second definition of exerting, the willingness to exert physical and mental, effort, one thing that drives that is when you believe that you have the ability to achieve something from that particular engagement. And so for someone who believes that they have the capacity, they have the abilities, they have what it takes, the skills, they built the needed skills to speak to a gathering, public speaking, when you give them an engagement where they need to speak to a group of people, chances are that they'll be willing to exert the energy or effort for that because there's this sense of, I can do it, I have what it takes to do it. And so for every student, a belief in their capacity, that they have the capability to achieve success in their education, in a course, a program, can fuel their motivation level. So if a student believes I cannot do well in mathematics because, I struggle, I don't know much, it's difficult, that student may not exert energy, physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy into learning their maths as a subject. If a student is really not someone who feels that they are good at learning languages, if it comes to their French class, they may not really do much in that. Personally, I was somebody that didn't exert a lot of, effort into my French lessons because, but in primary school, we had a French teacher in, I think 2 of the primary schools I attended, we had French lessons at some point. And I didn't really put in much effort when it came to French, doing homework, going to read and learn. No, because I felt I wasn't really good at learning languages. And interestingly, although I lived in a community in my early childhood where there were Ga speaking people, I did Ga in primary school, I couldn't learn the Ga. And so if I'm a student and I believe that I'm not good at something, I don't have what it takes to learn a particular subject and do well in it, chances are that my motivation levels for that will be low. So motivation as self-efficacy is talking about how the individual student perceives their own abilities and strengths. So if you as a teacher, you're able to provide constructive feedback on the student's weakness while also enhancing their belief of the strengths that they have, where you highlight their strengths and help them to see how they can improve on the weak areas, then what you'll be doing is that you are improving their sense of efficacy, their self-efficacy, and that can lead to the willingness to exert more physical and mental energy when it comes to their learning. So, as a student, if there's an area I feel incompetent in, chances are that waking up in the morning to attend to an assignment in that particular course may not really be something that I do as much with as much energy, as much urgency as other areas where I feel that this one I can do it. And so I need to work around my self belief, my confidence level when it comes to particular subjects and programs. I always tell students, when you hear that a subject is difficult, always remember that there are some students who have done very well in that particular subject. So you get to the university, you get to senior high school, they tell you this particular teacher is very difficult. This particular subject is very difficult. In fact, if you pass their course, you thank your God. And all that kind of, things that they say. Yes, it may be true that that topic, that subject, that program is difficult. But there are students who graduated with a first class from that department. There are students who got A's in that particular course or subject. And so that means that if you put in the needed effort and you get the needed guidance, you will be able to do it. And so we need to work on our mindset and how we look at ourselves relative to certain subjects and certain teachers and lecturers. That is important. And so motivation as self-efficacy. How does the student see themselves and their abilities? And what can you do as a student to improve your sense of self-efficacy? The I can't, as you see in that image, should become I can do it. And that can increase your willingness to put in the needed effort. The second dimension we'll look at is motivation as self-determination. Now, there's this theory called the self-determination theory, and maybe in a different lesson, I'll talk about that. But the idea is that as human beings, we are driven by a certain motivation to achieve. And in that, we are looking at a sense of autonomy where we have a choice in whatever happens with us. And that sense of autonomy is what we are capturing in this motivation as self-determination. So a student, for instance, that is personally motivated, intrinsically motivated, is often driven by a sense of having a choice in what subjects, or what course, what program they will read. They had a role to play in choosing their course in SHS or in the university. That sense of being part of the decisions of their life, when to learn, is all something that feeds into their motivation levels. You have a choice. And so if the student feels or your child feels that they learn better in the evening and they are given the opportunity to learn more in the evening, then that feeds into their motivation and willingness to exert effort in their education. If they want a particular textbook, and for instance, in senior high school, the popular textbooks brands, Akiola, but maybe a student prefers, I've forgotten the names of some of the other brands, Qualms or some other book publisher. If you are able to understand the role of choice, autonomy, and competence in improving or fueling students' motivation, then you would be willing to listen to your child and why he wants that particular brand rather than the one that you feel is the popular one. And so in class, the assignments, the methods to use. There are some teachers that if they teach you method A, if you don't use that method in the exam or in the quiz, that is it, you will get it wrong. But that shouldn't be the case. There's not only one way of solving a particular math equation. So if there's another way of solving it, and that is the way that the student can easily do it, recall and do it, why not? And so the importance of self-determination is that for a student who feels that their education in terms of their coursework, in terms of assignments, how the lesson structure is, they have played a role in how things should be, When they raise their hands to answer a question in class, they are allowed to ask the questions, answer questions, and all that. They feel that they are part of the learning, the teaching process, and that makes them better motivated. And so, allowing students to choose projects or alternative methods increases their engagement level. Very important. The third dimension we are looking at is motivation as interest and value. Now, a lot of studies have identified that the level of value that we place on a task influences our motivation. And during my undergraduate study, long essay, my thesis was in understanding students' goal orientation, the role of task value, expectancy of success, and how that shapes learning behavior. And one of the things that I realized from my study, and that relates to other studies as well, is that when students believe that a particular subject is important, a particular topic is important, a particular project will help them understand something or get an experience. So if they are supposed to go to the slum, and talk to some residents there, that gives them some experience, some exposure. Once there is a certain value placed on the learning activity or content, it increases their willingness to put in the effort or exert the needed, energy. So when students perceive topics as meaningful and personally relevant, they engage more deeply in the learning process. So then, as you see in the image, tell me more. So if you're a teacher or you've taught before, you realize that there are certain topics that every year, whichever students that come, that topic seems to be an interesting topic for all students. Probably because of how the teacher teaches it, or because the students perceive a certain value in it for them. And so motivation as interest and value is saying that when students find your lesson meaningful, when they find your lesson to be important, they will engage more deeply with you and the lesson. The reading materials, if they find it meaningful, so that's why as a student, you should also be careful what kinds of learning materials you get yourselves into. So there are certain people that offer more value in a simple manner. Certain books you read, they are so complicated, and so you will not really get much from it. And so if you continue relying on such books that, anytime you are reading it, doesn't seem to make sense. Maybe it may be the recommended book by your lecturer or teacher, but you don't seem to be getting any value from it. What are the alternatives? Very important to search out alternatives that can help you appreciate the whole topic or subject better. So a student who is interested, or you find statistics as something that is meaningful, it helps me to understand how to do business. Those students may take their statistics lessons very seriously or mathematics lessons seriously. If they are business students, maybe the accounting component gives them a certain sense of value because their parents operate a business, or they have a business that they are able to use the bits about petty cash, profit and loss account. And so there's that value that they see in the lesson. There are times where, as a teacher, you also need to project the value and relevance of the lesson to your students. There are some topics that you hear people funnily saying that, what did we learn was differentiation for dy dx. What has it done in my life? In fact, as someone who is working within mental health, what am I using dy dx for? What am I using 2x3 matrix for, and all that? But you see, all these topics that we learn, the subjects we learn at the primary level, junior high school level, senior high school, tertiary levels, have a role to play in shaping our intellect and our ability to, think on our feet and make meaningful discussions, problem solve, and all that things. So the value, the relevance of the subject matter is also important. And when you project it to the student, or as a student, you find value beyond what immediately you may be getting from the topic, it can help you to increase your motivation level. The fourth dimension is motivation as expectancy of success. And this is connected to tax value, connected to self-efficacy. Now, there are a lot of research, and I'll attach some links in the description where you can read around, some of these studies. And I mentioned for my undergraduate level long essay or thesis, one of my key variables was expectations or expectancy of success and how that shapes learning behavior. And you'd realize from the literature that when students believe that they can succeed in a course, which connected to their sense of self-efficacy, you'd find that they do better. They put in more effort. Students are more motivated to engage in learning when they believe they can succeed. And that is why, as a teacher, you need to be careful with your utterances. There are some teachers that, make it seem like the subject they are teaching, if you do well in it, it's a taboo. I don't know, but they seem to find delight in students failing in their subjects or courses. That is wicked. That really is not the value of education. The value of education is to ensure the learner gets better and is able to do what needs to be done to move forward. And so if your students keeps getting 0/10 in your subject, then you are not a good teacher. You're not a good educator. And so the students, self-efficacy, which we spoke about as the first dimension of motivation, is also hinged on whether or not you as a teacher, you are making them believe that they can do well in your subject. And so there are some lecturers, some teachers who will tell you that, this subject is very easy, don't worry, you'll do well. They want to diffuse any sense of I can't do it from you and promote this understanding that if you put in the effort, you will succeed. And so when they do well, you have a student who probably is struggling with English reading, and little boy, little girl, when they're able to read one sentence at a point, they are encouraged that, yeah, you are doing well, you will get better, you get better. That feeds into their expectations of success. And the fifth dimension we'll talk about is motivation as conditioned behavior. And this is related to behaviorism, the perspective of psychology, or the school of psychology that believes that every behavior, personality, actions are shaped by the environment. So behavior is conditioned by experiences and the environment. And so reinforcement and punishment are the key things that shape students' motivation in this case. And so you can think of students being motivated because of the rewards they get. So if I'm first in class and I'm praised, I get some chicken at home, I'm everybody's darling boy, chances are that I'll be better motivated. My level of motivation to learn and do more would be increased. Unlike if I am trying my best and I'm not getting the kind of reinforcement, the rewards that I believe should accompany it. And there are students whose motivation for learning and putting, as we defined in the beginning, exerting the willingness to exert physical and mental effort, that willingness begins to go down because they are not reinforced. And so if you are a teacher, you are a parent, you want to look at ways that you can reward your students, your learners, your children when they are doing well in school. It could just be by praising them, applauding them, taking them out when some surprise day out for them, preparing their favorite food when they come second, probably because previously they were third, or they were 20th, now they are doing well, they are in 15th. The rewards you give them, the applause, the positive, comments and feedback can help them to keep putting in the effort. And there are also consequences. So we talk about punishment, and there are different kinds of punishments, that seek to shape behavior. But one of the things that in looking at, reinforcement and punishment. The kind of punishment that is usually effective is what we call negative punishment. And in negative punishment, what you do is to remove something that is pleasant so that you can shape behavior that you want to improve. So for the student, if it is their phone, that is, although it's a positive thing, it's like some pleasurable thing. It is a distraction to them, social media and all. You can take away the phone for a period, so that the idea is once you want to get your phone back, then you need to study. And once you do better in your next quiz or exam, I return the phone to you. That consequence of having the phone taken away can be the reason why they will be willing to exert more effort physically, mentally, emotionally in order to do well. And we have what we call the Primack principle, which is really a form of negative punishment. So if there's a learning behavior I want to improve in the student, maybe they don't like asking questions in class or answering questions in class, they are always late in presenting their projects or homework, I take away something important from them. If they have a very good friend they always want to visit, I can say that unless you are done with your homework or unless you submit your project, you cannot get to see that friend. That consequence of not doing the homework or finishing the project on time, the consequence of not being able to see their friend, can be a reason why they will be motivated to learn, do their best and complete their work on time. So reinforcement and punishment or consequences of behavior can serve as a driving force for motivation among students. The last dimension we'll talk about is motivation as competition. Some students are motivated by the fact that they are doing better than other students. And you see, it's not bad in itself. Competition in itself is not bad. I remember in my schooling days at the lower basic level, one of the things that drove me to study harder, to continue, learning and doing my best, is because there are certain people I didn't want to bypass me. You see, so at one of the levels, I will not mention at what level, but there was this particular colleague of mine that I didn't want her to take the first position and I'll be second. And so I know she was a very good student. She was actually a very brilliant student. And so if you don't put in the effort, if you don't learn hard, chances are that she will be first and you will be second. And so that competitive, bit of not wanting her to overtake you leads you to learn more. So for some students, that is what motivates them. The fact that they are doing better than somebody who is also very good in itself can be a certain motivation. So as you see in the image there, I think that's one of the Olympics, Usain Bolt. There are other athletes that are equally good, but the reason why Usain Bolt kept that top level is because he kept putting in effort, and he knew that if he does not, there are others who are also equally doing better, training hard, who will overtake him. And so the students' motivation, their willingness to exert effort, their willingness to exert physical and mental effort in pursuit of the academic goals, or that impetus that drives their purpose or direction, can sometimes also be hinged on who they see as competition. So in a class where everybody is not really doing well, you are the only champion in the class. If care is not taken, you may begin to reduce your effort. Your effort in learning may begin to go down, because all the time, even if you put in minimal effort, you are first in class. But if there's competition, and that's how, as a teacher, as a parent, you can create a certain healthy competition among your students, where they understand that, and that ties in with motivation as conditioned behavior, where they understand that the first position comes with a certain reward. If you improve on your last position, there's a reward for you when you come home, so that they understand that there's something at stake relative to how they perform with others. And we need to balance that. As a student, you need to also balance that in your mind, that you are not competing with another student just for the purpose of being the better one, or so that you can boast that you are better, but you are using them as a point to keep you motivated. And I think, I'm not so sure, but there have been interviews done of Lionel Messi, one of the best in world football, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And in those instances, you hear how when they were in La Liga together, either of them will say the other person, is a motivation for them, because that Messi in Barcelona is putting in the effort. He's the one who is doing his best to be the best in the world. He's winning the cups and all. Ronaldo in Real Madrid is also the man on show. He's training hard. And so each person serves as a motivation for the other, as competition, because if he scores 3 goals, then I need to work hard to score 4 goals, so that at the end I can win the top goal scorer for the season. That is healthy competition. You are not wishing the other person bad, but you are making sure that this other student who is also doing well, let me use him or her as my, in quote, healthy competition, so that if they are getting 90 over 100 in a subject, how can I do my learning, put in the effort, including probably do group studies with them and all that, so that I can get 95 in the next one? That is motivation as competition. And it's an important factor when it comes to students' learning behavior. For students who probably feel that, there's no competition, sometimes, yes, there's no competition. Everybody is in school by themselves and will live by themselves. But in fact, in this world, it is a competitive world. When you complete your graduate study or undergraduate study or SHS, whichever level you are, you will have to be compared to others when it comes to getting admitted. And where you stand in comparison with the others will determine whether or not you are taken or admitted for a particular program where they need 100 people or not. And so if you want to keep yourself motivated, you want to look at how the other students who are doing well in your class, in your school, how they are performing, and then use that as a way of motivating yourself to learn harder, do what probably they are doing, so that you will become a better student. So these are the 6 key dimensions we want to look at, and I'm believing that we have picked 1 or 2 things from there. Whether you're a teacher or a student or a parent, an educator, I'm sure that you tap into these key dimensions and see how you can improve motivation level of your students or yourself as a student. Thank you so much for joining today's episode of our students related lessons on the channel. I am Wisdom, and I hope to see you in the next video. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be sharing a reflection from chapter 3 of Dr. Miles Monroe's book, The Principles and Power of Vision. Thank you and stay safe. Bye-bye.